Newly unredacted emails from Dr. Anthony Fauci suggest that he was not sold on the natural COVID origin theory, despite what he was telling the public.
Former State Department investigator claiming Fauci was part of a cover-up.
Griff Jenkins joins us live with more Live in the Flesh. We always get big smiles on our face when we see Griff here. How you doing, brother?
That's because I drink Coors Light when the sun comes up. But exactly let me digress. Good morning, guys. Paging Dr. Fauci, the House Select Committee on COVID has some questions for you. Chief among them, did COVID come from a lab leak? Because it appears in this latest revelation, Fauci acknowledges in private that gain-of-function research was underway in that lab in Wuhan, China. That's according to this unredacted email from February of 2020. And credit here goes to Martha McCallum's producers on the story who dug into this. Now take a look at these two images of the same email. One totally redacted, produced from a previous FOIA request. The other from the committee revealing what Fauci wrote to his fellow scientists, saying, quote, that would be most unusual to have evolved naturally in the bats. And there was a suspicion that this mutation was intentionally inserted. Now, one source says this information was not classified, but instead hidden because it made Fauci look bad since he knew of the gain of function. And Dr. Sapphire, you can appreciate this. The source also says Fauci, who oversaw the biodefense program at NIH, should have been aware that the Wuhan lab had been determined by the State Department to have, quote, inadequate safety controls. Now, Dr. David Asher, who is part of the State Department's investigation into COVID's origins, says this was a cover-up. Watch.
Now they're basically saying that, they had that thesis all the way up to just before the publication, basically, of their paper. And it was essentially rejected by Fauci and by Nature Medicine itself, which is also complicit. The cover-up is so much more extensive, and I can only imagine what's going to come out in the coming weeks as more of Fauci's internal communications are uncovered.
And I think he's right. More may be coming, guys. The committee chaired by Dr. Brad Winstrop says this is far from over. Pete, Will, Nicole.
Right. Thank you so much, Griff. Listening to some of this it's infuriating, borderline disgusting, in the sense that anyone who in 2020 even raised the question of the potential origin of this virus were deemed a charlatan. I was criticized across multiple media outlets saying that I was a conspiracy theorist, and it was just upsetting. And even in my book, Panic Attack, which I wrote about COVID, I have an entire chapter talking about why these mutations don't necessarily make sense happening in nature. And now you actually see Dr. Fauci agreed with me, yet I was heavily criticized. I'd like an apology.
You should. And as Will, you discussed, I mean, we're pining for accountability, yet you wonder where it goes. So what do? Drag Fauci in front of Congress again? He testifies, he denies things, he clashes with Rand Paul again, and then what? He's fawned over by the rest of the media despite the evidence that's piling up about him. When you look at the beginning and origins of COVID, he had legitimate government and business interests in what was going on at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. He didn't want that to be exposed for whatever reason, because of that research, because of the funding, because of people he was connected to, because of his relationship with China. We don't know, but he quickly realized this is a problem, and whatever the real story is needs to be pivoted to this is a natural origins theory. And getting accountability for that feels nearly impossible right
It just had such a drastic impact on all of our lives. I said in the past hour that I'm willing to be creative in seeking accountability. What I mean by that, Pete, is this: look, we get a little bit calloused to politicians that lie to us because it happens so often. We've been inundated with lies for the past 3 years. Those lies having real dramatic impacts on our lives. But if in fact he did have any kind of fiduciary interest in what was going on in Wuhan. If I were a prosecutor, I would be looking at any potential charge for anyone involved in the depths, the breadth of this fraud. This fraud perpetrated on the American...
By the way, and it will not get that far because he is so intimately involved politically. I would settle for a public statement accepting culpability and an apology. That is one thing he has yet to do. He has yet to say, I am wrong, I was wrong, and I'm so sorry for the consequences. Because it doesn't just stop at the viral origins. What about the fact that he continued to recommend that children as young as 2 wear face masks? The CDC now telling us that, well, there were consequences to those actions. And those children ages 3 to 17 diagnosed with developmental disabilities are up 17% from 2019. Don't tell me this isn't because our kids were in face masks and kept out of school. You know, earlier in the show, I spoke with Jacqueline Teague, clinical director and speech pathologist, about this very thing. Take a listen.
What we're seeing in our clinic is tremendous amount of referrals of speech and language delays, developmental delays, social pragmatic delays, just general motor planning disorder. It's astounding, and not a surprise at all. The mandates that were in place, people staying at home for a long period of time and not getting out and socializing has just negatively impacted so much of our child's development. Talk to your pediatrician, get the referral. Don't wait. They really need the assistance, help them to catch up from where they were.
And the sad part is this is probably not kids who otherwise have a good home situation or a good school situation with parents who have the means and ability to provide for them over the time. These are kids who are already behind, who already had environmental, societal, family issues and challenges. Now you stick them in a mask, you pull them out of class, you don't socialize them, they're probably staring at a phone. And then we wonder why the long-term effects of disability and developmental problems exist. And the CDC's coming out with this. I mean, fine. The CDC, they've lost all credibility too on almost any issue as they dabble into, gender-affirming care and all the other stuff they do these days.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.